Domino's Pizza is arguably one of the most successful fast food chains in the entire country. They have over 6,000 restaurants just in the US alone, and they have some of the cheapest pizza available. They're quick. Their quality has gone up substantially over the past 5 to 10 years after they had some problems in the past. And even a company like Domino's is still having a hard time in this economy. Domino's just came out with their fourth quarter earnings report for 2024, and what it revealed is that the revenues actually went up by 3% year over year, which on the surface looks good, but the US same-store sales only went up by 0.4%, and the expectation was that it would go up by 1.63%, so a huge miss. And right after this announcement happened, Domino's stock prices went down by 6%. One thing that the CEO of Domino's pointed out on the earnings call is that they're noticing that a lot of their low-income customers are now starting to avoid delivery. And this is just going to be one of many stories in this video, guys, because there is so much to unpack about what's happening in the economy this week. It's not even funny. And I thought I would start off with this because even the companies that are supposedly doing really good aren't really doing that good anymore. And that's the alarm bell that we all need to pay attention to. So Domino's said they face a 3.2% increase in carryout orders and a 1.4% decrease in deliveries during the same quarter. The CEO says delivery is a tougher value right now in this value-conscious world. Value-conscious world. Why are people value-conscious right now? Oh, I don't know. Maybe because the cost of living has gone through the roof and everybody's looking for a way to save a buck, and not getting delivery and going to pick it up yourself, especially if you live close, is the smarter option. You know, according to a recent survey from LendingTree, they found that 78% of consumers view fast food now as a luxury as it's become more expensive. And 43% of Americans who were asked to tip on fast food orders refused to do so, which makes sense. And 62% said they're eating less fast food due to rising prices, which of course is a good thing. Can't avoid it, guys. You're gonna have to just live with it. Construction noise, leaf blower, whatever it may be, the world is under construction. And the reason why this is worrying for Domino's is because they say that their delivery fees are extremely competitive. The fact that people are still choosing not to do it is worrisome. They say that they're very competitive on the price for delivery, but also on the delivery fee, and of course the pizza and really any other item you would get delivered from Domino's. You're getting a pizza delivered to your house for $6.99 for each pizza, you know, plus a delivery fee and any tip you give to your driver, isn't a bad deal in today's world. But even that's not enough to entice people to do it. The CEO of Domino's also said that he's not really a big fan of all of these promotional meal deals that a lot of the other fast food restaurants are doing, because what it is it's not value. Sure, you get something cheaper, but it's something oftentimes you don't really want to get, and the customer ends up not really being happy. So Domino's, what they decided to do is they decided to go a completely different direction last year, and they had something called a moreflation deal instead of an inflation deal, which allowed customers to mix and match 2 or more medium 2-topping pizzas for $6.99 each, and you can even upgrade one of them to a large for free. They also have a rewards program where the more you order, then the more you can qualify to get free food from the restaurant, things like that. And I'm guilty from ordering from Domino's from time to time because it is pretty cheap and it is not really bad for the price. Honestly, if I have to choose, I would rather order a Domino's for takeout than put a frozen pizza in the oven, guys, if I have to choose. And we know that the fast food industry has been in trouble for a while now, but here's a local fast food chain that recently fell on hard times. Pollo Tropical, they are closing some of their locations here in Florida. Now, they are a much smaller local chain, so unless you're familiar with Florida, you probably have never heard of them. They have about 125 restaurants throughout Florida, and they have 25 restaurants internationally, which are franchised out. It's kind of like a Chipotle-style restaurant. They were purchased by a company called Authentic Restaurant Brand 16 months ago. They just closed 3 restaurants in the Jacksonville area, which means that they're pretty much no longer going to be in northeastern Florida anymore. So that pretty much puts all of the Pollo Tropical restaurants now here in the South Florida area. And this is for no rhyme or reason. There was no reason stated of why they're closing. All they did was have signs in the windows saying that we appreciate our loyal guests. It has been a pleasure to serve you over the years. This location is permanently closed. We thank you for understanding. That's it. No explanation. But I'm willing to bet it's for the same reason that all the other fast food chains have had to close down locations. Is due to slow sales and people not coming in, and they're cutting their losses. And that's why I said earlier, like, even when you see a company like Domino's start to have trouble, you know it's starting to get real, because Domino's is literally one of the most successful fast food brands and pizza chains in the entire world. And really, the things are just getting started with this economy, because the Pentagon, they just announced that they're going to be laying off 5,400 civilian workers, with tens of more thousands of firings coming up in the near future, guys. So this is all starting to get very real with these government layoffs and people losing their jobs. And this is going to have a ripple effect throughout the economy, which we're going to talk about here in just a second. But first, let's go over the details. The Pentagon announced that they're going to fire 5 to 8% of its civilian workforce starting this week, okay? 5,400 probationary workers are going to be gone, and the initial layoffs will be followed by a Department of Defense hiring freeze to analyze the military's personnel needs in compliance with Trump's political goals. Here's what they said about this. It is simply not in the public interest to retain individuals whose contributions are not mission critical. Taxpayers deserve to have us take a thorough look at our workforce top to bottom to see where we can eliminate redundancies. I completely agree, guys. I'm pretty sure most Americans agree with this, unless you're somebody who is losing your job. Now, the Defense Department is the largest government agency, which means they stand to lose the most workers as these firings continue. And if they actually lay off 5 to 8% of the workforce, this could mean anywhere between 35,000 and 60,000 people gone. And in similar news, it turns out that a lot of the federal workers that got notices saying that they were going to have to basically justify their job to Elon Musk or be fired, I guess they're going to get a second chance to justify their job, because a lot of people got an email that told them that they need to summarize their accomplishments of the past week, and that failure to comply with this would be considered a resignation. But apparently people who didn't comply are going to be getting a second chance. But they're now saying that if they don't reply to this second email, pretty much justifying their position, then they are going to lose their job for good this time around. I would imagine the reason that they're doing this is because there's a lot of confusion with these layoffs and these buyout offers that have been happening with the Doge department. And because everything is kind of up in the air and not very straightforward, people don't really know what to do in many cases. They're being told one thing by this OPM department, they're being told another thing by their actual boss at work, saying, no, you don't have to respond to these letters. So it's a lot of confusion and people don't know what to do. So far, the Doge department has laid off 20,000 government workers though, and they've also successfully completed 75,000 buyouts from other government workers. So that's already almost 100,000 people completely gone, guys. And you can say that, well, the 75,000 who took the buyout offer were probably 1 foot out the door already anyways, and we're planning on leaving, so it's not a big deal. It's a normal turnover. However, it's still people that they don't have working there anymore, which is less people that the government has to pay, which is good for all of us. It's also a lot of people who are out of work for now, unless they already have a plan set up, which I imagine a lot of people that took the buyout offer probably have some kind of contingency plan. They probably already have another job lined up. Maybe they're getting close to retirement and just retiring anyways. Who knows, right? But here's how this whole layoff situation with the government is going to affect the economy, and already is affecting the overall US economy. Because all these agencies that are losing people, they do business with the private sector. Like the government has contracts with private companies that do business with the government. They sell them products, services, things like that. But because a lot of these agencies are losing so much of their staff and don't need as many outside services or products anymore from private businesses, now these private businesses are seeing a slowdown in their workload. They're laying off people as well. So it is a domino effect. You could say that the US government is probably the largest employer in the US, and it has a ripple effect because when they lose people, everybody else loses people as well. And the reality is these layoffs have only been happening for about a month now, guys. So we haven't even begun to see the true effects of how this is going to really play out throughout the economy. Because you got to remember, this is all on top of all the regular firings and layoffs that we've been hearing about from private companies. This is in addition to those. You know, Starbucks, they just announced this week that they're going to be laying off 1,000 more workers, all going to be corporate employees. Remember, corporate employees at Starbucks make a lot of money. So these people are high income earners that arguably are the most important piece of the puzzle when it comes to economic spending in this country, and they are losing jobs. Same thing goes with a lot of these government workers too. Starbucks, they have been seeing their quarterly sales decline through several quarters of the past year, so they haven't been doing good for a while now. And they also just implemented the whole thing where you can't stick around or use the bathroom unless you're going to be actually purchasing one of their products. And so Starbucks is starting to see some major changes too. And it's only corporate workers that are being affected by this. They said that nobody's going to be laid off in the roasting, manufacturing, warehousing, distribution, or the cafe working departments. So pretty much people who are in charge of all of the day-to-day operations, getting the coffee in your cup, are not going to be affected, just the corporate fat. And guess what happened after that? Shortly after the layoff announcement, Starbucks shares went up. You know, these layoff announcements are good news for the stock market. That's one thing I've went over several times in past videos. Like every time you see these companies do a layoff announcement, watch what happens to their stock price shortly after. You see the price go up because these investors are now excited that they're going to have less people to pay. And that means ultimately that profits go up. Now, there's other brands that have announced smaller layoffs lately. Bloomin' Brands, they said they're going to be laying off 100 corporate employees in the Tampa area. Yum Brands said last week that it's no longer going to maintain a headquarters in Louisville, Kentucky, which means they're going to be losing 100 employees over there. I mean, are you guys getting the picture that things are actually turning around and the economy is not as good as people have been talking about? Like everybody's just been saying how great things have been for so long, and that myth is now being debunked. On top of that, all the people who are remaining and who are not losing their job at Starbucks are going to be required to work in either Seattle or Toronto headquarters, with the expectation that you're going to be needing to be in the office more often than not. So it's no surprise with all these announcements and everything happening in the economy that consumer confidence just took a huge nosedive. In fact, it was the biggest monthly decline since August of 2021, as people were starting to get worried about inflation. Because probably people are starting to get worried about inflation once again, as well as losing their job, given the current state of affairs. The Consumer Confidence Index just fell to 98.3, making it the third straight month of decline, also marking the largest monthly decline since August of 2021. What does that tell you? It tells you that people are waking up and people are realizing that, yeah, things aren't so great, and it's finally starting to become apparent that that's the case. Last week, we talked about how the home builders were also worried. The home builder sentiment also plummeted last week due to all of the markers that home builders are expecting in the next 3 months going down when it comes to how many houses they think they're going to sell, how much they're going to have to lower prices, all sorts of things. And the crazy thing is the economic optimism was sky high just a few months ago when Trump got elected, but now all of that is going away, which is not really a huge surprise either, because this is something I've been telling people on the channel for a while. Like, that's not going to change anything. This trajectory that we're on is going to continue regardless of who's in the White House. That's exactly what we're starting to see happen now. You know, people initially thought that, yeah, this is going to make a huge difference now that Trump is president, and it is going to make a huge difference. It's probably going to make things worse before it gets better. But that's the smart approach, because that's the only way to fix these problems. You know, cutting all this government bloat, you know, getting rid of companies that don't make any money. That's how we slowly reset the US economy and get back to a point of prosperity, because we've been far away from that now for a long time. But I think a lot of people thought that, well, if I vote for Trump, then it's going to make the economy better. Well, it might eventually, once all of these problems have been worked out, but it's going to have to get worse before it gets better. That's what people missed with this. But according to the conference board, consumers have now become pessimistic about future business conditions and less optimistic about future income. And rightfully so. Everything we just talked about backs up that sentiment. People also have pretty much zero faith that inflation is going to go away. It's going to continue to remain a problem. Even the Fed themselves are keeping a close eye on it to see where things go. But I'm pretty sure they know that it is going to continue to get worse, because they know that their fight on inflation has been faked and it has not been effective. That's why we're seeing inflation go back up. Because if their fight on inflation was real and it was effective, we would have already seen inflation get knocked down to the floor. But that's not what we're seeing. We're starting to see it resurge at a time when it's supposed to be going down. And so ultimately, all of these expectations and fears affect how people spend money and what they do to kind of hunker down for the future, right? They're saying, well, we don't have to worry about this just yet, because even though the consumer sentiment just came out really low and it's not looking that good, we can't just go by 1 month's reading. We have to go for the trend, and also it doesn't always follow the trend. They pointed out a time back in June of 2022 when consumer sentiment fell to a record low, okay? Because inflation reached its peak back then, but Americans continued to spend, okay? So let's analyze that phrase for a second. First of all, June of 2022 feels like a lifetime ago, and people still had a lot of extra money back then, because people really haven't gotten squeezed at that point yet by inflation like everybody has now, fast forward to 2025. And so it's easy to keep spending when you haven't seen the full effects of inflation permeate your budget just yet. In addition to that, something that these reports never take into consideration is that, yeah, of course people have to continue to spend. Life doesn't just stop. And if everything's costing more, then it appears that the spending is going up, right? Because nominally, the spending is going up. People have to spend more to buy the same product or service, yet that doesn't mean that people are buying more of it. It just means that what they are buying costs more than it used to. But also, when you fast forward to today, this is a much different situation than what we saw back in June of 2022, because today's economy is pretty much rife with uncertainty right now, and that's going to affect people's spending plans. People are uncertain about their job. People are uncertain about inflation. People are uncertain about what's going to happen next. Wells Fargo also released a survey just a day ago saying about 3/4 of the people surveyed across the country said they plan to reduce their spending, citing uncertainty in the economy as the reason. Well, I think that's smart. This is what I've been telling people to do for a long time here now on the channel. And yeah, is it going to help expedite the downturn if people slow down and stop spending and start saving more? Absolutely. But it's in your own best interest to do so, because you need to make sure that your own bills are paid. You need to make sure that your family's taken care of. And of course, the ironic part with that is the more people hunker down and the less people spend, then the worse the overall economy does, and more people end up losing their jobs, and it's that spiral effect. Wells Fargo also said that consumer behaviors are shifting. The value of the dollar and what it's providing may not be as predictable anymore, and that is starting to shift consumer behavior. Well, no kidding, guys. This is why I've told people time and time again to get out of debt, because it's less dollars you're going to have to pump into the debt system, and it's less interest you're going to have to pay, which means more money saved in your pocket for this unexpected volatility in prices. And also, I've told people time and time again that they should be buying gold and silver, because that stuff tends to outweigh inflation. It tends to outpace inflation, and you're saving real money at that point. This survey from Wells Fargo also showed that 82% of Gen Z and 79% of millennials plan to pare back their spending in the coming months. So we'll see if that actually happens, because of course those generations are the most guilty of spending money that they don't have right now. But honestly, guys, I don't think it really matters anymore what happens. I feel like, the momentum has already shifted in favor of things taking a turn for the worse. and the situation is just going to have to play itself out. There's nothing that people can really do to reverse it. All you can really do is to be prepared for it. If you've been watching my channel for a while now, you've probably done a lot of the things that I tell people to do by eliminating your debt, by having an emergency fund, by renting instead of buying a home right now, saving you 30 to 50% on your monthly housing payment, buying gold and silver, having other investments. And of course, not everybody can do all those things at once, but just starting to do one or two will get you leaps and bounds ahead of a lot of people who are doing nothing besides charging up the credit card, which we know many people are doing that, considering that the debt levels are at all-time highs now. And I think the thing that most people need to be worried about right now is a job loss. You know, that's why I'm a big proponent of working for yourself, because you're in a lot more control of your income and your own financial future. People have been sold a lie over the years that, you know, having a job is far more secure than being an entrepreneur, but today's recent times are showing that that is actually not the truth. Just be ready, guys. Be ready for whatever comes your way, because there's a lot of changes coming down the pipeline in a relatively short period of time right now. There's so many more things I wanted to talk about in this video that I couldn't even get to, so I'll have to put it in another video about the economy later this week. So if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and if you don't want to wait for my next video to come out, check out this one on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.